everybody, and thank you for making time to join us here this evening to get to know and speak a little bit with our Democratic candidates who we are very excited to hopefully pull these election victories off. For those of you who don't know who I am, Marcus Montoya, I'm your 8th Judicial District Attorney. And we're here tonight thanks to all the hard and diligent work always displayed by the Taos Votes Blue, Taos County Democratic Party. With Darian Fernandez as our chair, we've got Anjanette Brush and the endless hard work by George Brown. So thank you all for making this happen and allowing us to, almost more than any other county, always get in touch with our candidates, make them available to us and make us available to our candidates. So thank you so much. We tonight have with us former Taos Pueblo governor and current Taos Pueblo councilman Gilbert Suazo. I'd like to say hello, and we're having some technical video difficulties, but Mr. Suazo, if you'd like to say hi, I'm sure we're going to be more than happy to hear from you.
Good evening. I'd like to say thank you to Teresa for inviting me to participate this evening, and hello to everybody.
Thank you for joining us, Councilman. Next, it's very fortunate, and I know these Supreme Court justices are very busy this time of COVID pandemic crisis, but I would like to take this opportunity to introduce New Mexico Supreme Court Justice and recent appointee by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to the Supreme Court bench, Justice David K. Thomson. He took the oath earlier in February 4th, 2019. It's been great to see him serve. Before that, he was a district judge in the First Judicial District, comprised of Los Alamos County, Santa Fe County, and Rio Arriba County, and has, after appointment to the bench, of course, serving us during these very many rulings and hearings that the Supreme Court has had to do during this pandemic. And I know it's a lot of work. He grew up and graduated from Santa Fe High. He's a Santa Fe High demon. And I am very happy to have him joining us here tonight. So Justice Thomson, if you would take some time to allow us an opportunity to hear from you and get to know a little bit about you, that'd be fantastic.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here with the Taos Democrats. DA Montoya, thank you for hosting, and Mr. Brown, Governor Suazo. It's a pleasure, as always, to appear with Teresa Fernandez, who I know as a litigator. I litigated voting rights cases with her. She's an unbelievable attorney, a very bright and capable woman, and I'm sure you all find her the same as a candidate for Congress, so it's an honor to be with you today. I have a soft spot for Taos. My wife family is Taoseño. I don't know if there's any Romeros or Vargases on the call. If there are, hello to everybody. This is Ruben Romero, who is Patty's father, passed away. He was Taos Tiger along with Uncle Davey, and we keep close ties to Taos, and we miss everybody up there very much. I want to spend 2 minutes talking with you about what I do and why Teresa and others appear to talk about the judiciary. I was appointed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, along with a colleague of mine, Justice Shannon Bacon, who you may hear from later in the week. And we give speeches along with Judge Ives on the Court of Appeals, Shamara Henderson on the Court of Appeals. And unlike many of you may focus on the federal system, right? Everybody is sort of watching to see how Ruth Bader Ginsburg is doing. Checking, the temperature every day. Under the federal system, you don't really have a choice with regard to who your Supreme Court justices are. That's decided by the President of the United States and by the United States Senate. Now, for good or for evil, the decision on who serves the judiciary in New Mexico is done by the voters. We go through a bipartisan commission where they interview us, and if they find us qualified, we go up to the governor for nomination and appointment, and then we have to run at the first general election. And that's what we're doing here. Why are we important? Well, the federal judiciary is not the only game in town. As a district attorney will tell you, the majority in the United States, the majority of cases, civil and criminal, are processed through your state courts. That's one reason. Another reason is we have a constitution too. We have equal protection clause. We have a right to privacy. And those determinations can be made under the federal constitution or the state constitution. And if a state court, my court, makes a decision on state law under the state constitution, it is not reviewable by the United States Supreme Court. And so as we understand, or as you may view a retraction by the federal courts with regard to certain constitutional guarantees, you may look at your state courts for those protections. I sort of call it, it's an interesting reverse federalism. There's a sense in which we are filling the gaps in a role that is traditionally done by our federal courts. People ask, well, why you as a judge? I don't like the idea of being partisan. Is that important to me? What do I look for in the judiciary? And having had a few of these conversations with Teresa, we talk a lot about John Lewis. And we've talked recently about him crossing the Pettus Bridge. And it formed in me a very good analogy that helps me, I hope, explain what you should look for in a judge. What John Lewis was doing is he was approaching the bridge, he was crossing the bridge, and he was being blocked by state police officers. And they were using the power of the state to keep him from going and exercising his First Amendment right. The question for you is, which side of the bridge are you on when you're voting for a judge or justice? Are you with the person that is walking across the bridge, trying to exercise their constitutional rights, trying to express to others, I have a right to be treated equally under the law? That's all I ask. Or are you looking for a judge or justice that is on the other side of the bridge, trying to prevent Mr. Lewis from achieving his goals? Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. Power concedes nothing without demand. And the rule of law and the Constitution demands equality. And you need to ask of your judicial candidates, do they demand that of our democratic system? I was born and raised in Santa Fe. My wife was born and raised in Santa Fe. I was a product of Santa Fe Public Schools. Went to school in Connecticut and came back along with, as did Justice Bacon, and worked in the New Mexico Attorney General's office and became a district judge and began my service in public service. And I want to continue my service in the service of the citizens of New Mexico. So I will end with this. I think really you're going to hear from different branches of government and different elected officials. And when you talk with your neighbors and members of the party, I want you to bring up the judiciary. I want you to say, what do I need to know about this judge or justice? Because now more than ever, objective truth matters. Facts matter. The rule of law matters. The application of the Constitution on behalf of those people with less power as applied to those people with power matters. And in November, you can make a difference. How? I am top of the ballot. I am statewide, but I am a low information candidate, as is Justice Bacon. We need you to talk to your neighbors and explain to them the importance of the judiciary. Reach out to 10 people. Go to our website, keepjusticethomson.com, keepjusticebacon.com, and spread the word about your judiciary. Justice Bacon and I will go anywhere to talk to any civic organization, church, school, and tell you why we think the judiciary is important. Mr. DA, thank you again for the opportunity to speak to the party this evening, and I stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Justice Thompson. And I think we've got a couple of minutes for those of you who can punch a question into the bottom center of the screen. There's a chat button, and maybe shoot a question, or and then either I think George or Anjanette will vet the questions and ask a question for Justice Thompson to answer before we move on with tonight's agenda. And Justice Thompson, while we're waiting for questions to be punched in, perhaps if you don't mind punching in, we heard you say where we could go to follow your campaign and your platform, but if you could maybe punch that into the Zoom group chat also, it'll be there for us to review for the remainder of tonight's discussion. So that being said, Justice Thompson has stood for questions, and I don't see any popping up in the Zoom group chat, but if anyone has got some questions, please go ahead and wave your hand or ask to be let in.
You can unmute yourself if you want and talk, but I would like everybody who isn't supposed to be talking to mute themselves so that there isn't background noise, people eating and drinking and kicking their feet. Okay, there's keepjusticethomson.com in the chat. Anjanette, you want to ask this question about the post office?
Actually, George, I'm not seeing it. It might have just gone to the host.
Okay. Here it is.
You can direct your question to either everybody or to an individual. So.
Okay, this is for the justice. How can we New Mexicans make sure our post office continues to work effectively throughout the 2020 election?
That is, and having been on a few of these with my my friend Teresa, she probably has a more formative answer to that with regard to the federal government's role in the operation of the post office and what they're doing at the federal level to address some of those concerns. Teresa, do you want to jump in here?
So I think that everybody is concerned because we know that the Republicans in this administration basically don't have, they've been quite direct about that they don't want to see mail-in voting. They don't want to see Americans taking the safe way of voting, and they want to undermine the post office. So what we can do, I think, is several things that we personally can do, right? That we can make sure we request our ballots early. We can make sure that if you're worried about the post office in terms of returning your ballot, drop it off. The centers for voting will accept your absentee ballot. So you just go and drop it off. You don't, it's very safe. There's a box there, you drop it in. And so that's one of the things you could do. Early voting, we found during the primary, people felt very safe in that. Now at the national level, there is money in the HEROES Act for the Postal Service for issues with regards to voting. And so we need to keep the pressure on. If you know anybody in a state that isn't New Mexico, our delegation is very good about pushing to get the HEROES Act provisions passed. We need to remember the reason those aren't passed right now isn't because when they say, oh, Congress hasn't. No, the Senate hasn't. The Senate has not taken up the HEROES bill, and they have not offered their amendments to it, and they have not offered an alternative. So we need to keep pushing for that. So if you know of any family who lives in any other state with a Republican senator, have them call that senator. Call the senators yourself, right? You never know. So we need to keep pushing. so that the narrative is not that the Congress is failing, but that the Senate Republicans are refusing to take up that bill, which has money in it. I think this is where if we had Ben Ray or Deb or a sitting one, they can tell you whether they think there is going to be a movement. If we're all just watching the news, something's going to break. And if something breaks, hopefully they will then pass that bill, because those Republican senators are also worried about their own reelection. And so we hope that they'll keep in the HEROES bill, whatever gets passed, the money for the post office. But that's our best bet now for that. There might be legal action, but that might come from not really here in New Mexico, because right here in New Mexico, our Secretary of State is going to do a good job. Taos County Clerk, I know. We also, the other thing is we need to get all the county clerks around the state to agree that they will send out the absentee ballot request forms to everybody. Because remember, before, the Supreme Court authorized that to happen. But now it's up to each clerk as to whether or not they'll do it, and up to each clerk as to when they will do it. So if you know of any clerks in any other county, ask them, call them up and ask them to make sure they agree to send out the request for absentee ballots to every voter, and that they send it out early, because that's the other piece, that the legislative fix for the November election wasn't as clear. It gave more discretion to the clerks than, I would have preferred, to be honest.
And I believe, if I'll just jump in for a second, I believe, and George and others correct me if I'm wrong, in Taos County, our clerk is starting by sending out the absentee ballot request forms to the people who voted that way in the primary. So just a point of information. We do have one more question for Justice Thomson, if that's okay, from Stephen Redding. What are the priority issues or cases for the New Mexico Supreme Court next year, Justice Thomson?
So Stephen, that's a good question. I went to law school and I was ready to be learned in the law, and I was a federal law clerk, and I studied and I litigated at the New Mexico Attorney General's office, and I entered this job ready to be a deep thinker and writer. And what it ended up happening, I had to run an emergency management system because COVID happened. And we never closed. The judiciary never closed, and the DA can talk about this. We had to figure out quickly how to ensure that the judicial system continued to operate. And that has been a large priority, a large part of our work in 2020. The reason is despite COVID, there was still domestic violence. There were still people being picked up, put in jail, awaiting arraignment, and they couldn't sit in jail pending their charges without a judge looking at the charges and deciding whether they could be released on their own recognizance or whether they were dangerous to the community. So we immediately started remote proceedings and trying to figure out, I use it as a comparison. I tell people it was like trying to build a plane while it was flying. We were trying to figure out a way to communicate with the jails and practitioners and use platforms like this to make sure the judiciary continue to function. But here's a silver lining to it, and it's the other priority, which is access to justice. And we know in many parts of the community, and certainly in northern New Mexico, there's not enough access for legal representation. It's very expensive. We describe it as there are legal deserts throughout this state in which there aren't practitioners anywhere. And we continue to work on that issue to make sure that the courtrooms aren't just open physically, metaphorically, but people have access to legal representation and legal aid if they need it in areas, for example, of debt collection or eviction and things like that. What big issues are coming up? We've had several arguments on the public health orders. That seems to be a very hot topic, obviously. And we stream those arguments on a platform similar to this. And it's been a real benefit because a lot of people that may not come to the courthouse are able to watch those and see what the Supreme Court does and how they ask questions and how we base decisions, not on emotion, but on facts, and how we deliberate before we come to a conclusion, all those kind of things you're wanting from other elected officials. But as soon as we walk off the bench, there's 5 or 6 other cases just as important, quite frankly, whether it's someone serving a life sentence or, you know, a question about someone's incarceration. So I'm very honored to do it. It is a large obligation, and I understand that. But I think the 2 areas we really they've come out of this COVID situation are we're improving access to justice and access to the courts. So thank you, Stephen.
Judge Thomson, there are several good questions and one hand raised in the chat. And I would ask you, we would not consider it rude, I think, if you looked away and answered those questions in the chat so that everybody can see them if they would like. One is about your opinion about federal forces in Albuquerque. And the other is about diversity and the project that you're working on. That second one is from Tina Cruz, who you may know, an attorney. And the other is from Malonis, who is a terrific resident and volunteer and contributor to the Democratic Party, part of the Federation of Democratic Women here in Taos. And I think that Joe Casados also has his hand up. So would that be okay with you?
Would you like me to answer them if I can in the chat? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Brown?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
I will
please.
do that if
Okay.
I'm able. Let me give the disclaimer. If I'm not able to answer the question, it's not because I'm being rude. There are limits based on judicial conduct of what I can address and what I can't.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Very good, but thank you very much. So you can mute yourself now, and back to you, Marcus.
Thank you very much, Justice Thompson, and thank you everyone for those very thoughtful and very important questions that you've asked. And so now on to the star of the evening, and we never have enough time for any of our candidates. Like George said, there's a lot of great questions, and we've got a lot, I'm sure, ahead for Ms. Teresa Alegre Fernandez. Congratulations, Teresa. We haven't spoken, and I haven't seen you since the primary. Congratulations on a spectacular victory. That was a field of incredibly talented individuals, all of you who would have done a great job representing us, and I'm very proud of your victory. I think you're going to do a fantastic job. We look forward to your representation. That being said, everyone, Ms. Teresa Alegre Fernandez grew Norteña grown talent from Las Vegas. I think she's West Side, the Dons, and then she attended the, she went to Yale, and then after that graduated from Stanford Law School. We have all seen her fantastic and enjoyable commercials, and we've gotten to feel like we've come to know a little bit about you and your family. But that being said, please take 5 minutes to tell us about what we haven't seen, and maybe reiterate what we have seen on TV and in your website. That way we get to know you a little bit more intimately, and then we'll take some questions after that. Thank you, Teresa.
Okay, thank you, DA Montoya, and thank you so much to the Democratic Party of Taos County. Thank you for Taos Pueblo also is supporting this, and thank you, Council Member and former Governor Gil Suazo, for being on. I'm sorry we had technical difficulty. You know, Taos really is one of those special places for me. One, because, you know, I was in the marching band, and so I marched up and down the Pueblo, the roads there and the parades, and it was a lot of fun to be able to go back and march in the parades last summer, both the the two parades I got to march in, and I missed that, as we all did this summer. Taos was also, I think, one of the first places where I went and met with the Democratic Party there, and you guys blow everybody away with your enthusiasm, your get out the vote, and I want to thank Taos County because I did win Taos County, and that made me really happy. But you're right, there were some amazing candidates in this primary race, and I am thankful to each of them, including your own Kyle Tisdale, who always brought his enthusiasm and his passion for the environment, and in that we both share the same issues to all of our meetings and to all of our discussions, because in many ways a campaign is not just about vote for me or vote for this issue, it's about the discussions we have that are important to us. And I think in our primary and in the discussions we had, we talked about what we care about and what we love and what we need to have happen. And as all of you know, my campaign was about protecting what we love. That's how I'd like to describe it. Because when you love something, whether it is a family member, a friend, an ideal, a country, a community, a state, you're going to do everything you can to protect that thing that you love, that ideal. And right now, what we love is under such attack. And it is even worse than when we started this in 2019, because, 2019 was horrible. How could it get worse, right? Our humanity was under attack as we were tearing families apart and putting children in cages, as we were ignoring the science of our environment, as we were failing to address the healthcare needs. And then 2020 came, and it's even worse. Right? Those changes that demand action of us are even more challenging, which means we must do more. We must each do more. And, John Lewis, we've talked a lot about him. We've been in many, many Zoom meetings, and that's why Justice Thomson started with that. Because, John Lewis, when you heard him talking about what did they do to prepare to cross that bridge, what did they do to prepare to fight for civil rights? It was grounded indeed in a place of love, because they saw that love and nonviolence and addressing the need for civil rights, as he said, John Lewis said when he gave his speech on the March on Washington, he said, we are carrying forth the revolution. That is our duty. But he wasn't talking about a revolution of civil rights revolution of the 60s. He was talking about the revolution of the ideas of the Constitution of the United States, which have not yet been met. But they call upon us to form a more perfect union, don't they? And they call upon us to constantly be working on democracy, because we know that democracy is not something that just happens. Democracy is something that can be lost. And at this moment in time, our democracy is under threat, our democracy itself, which is why you heard one of the questions about the post office. And John Lewis told us that democracy is something that you must both love and work hard at. And President Obama, in his eulogy, told us that we must work hard at this. And Taos is the best of all the counties at working hard at this, because you have turnout, but we must redouble our efforts, because we want to not just win in November. I don't want to just win, right? I want to win big, but not for me. I want to win big for all of us up and down that ticket. President Biden isn't going to be able to spend a lot of money here because he needs to pay attention to those other states. But what we need to do in New Mexico is not just give him our 5 electoral votes. We need to turn out historic level of participation, the same way we did in the primary. We had historic levels of participation, even in COVID, even with those difficulties, because people know that elections matter, that leadership matters. And that in this moment of multiple interconnected crises, who we elect and how we elect them in November is very important. And the things that we need to address, and what I am going to make sure I work on, is that I don't forget that they're all interconnected, that are the crises that we are facing right now, and that's the crises in its plural form, is not just the crises of our democracy, of making sure that we come out and that we protect it from a leader who's actually taking very autocratic stances of postponing an election, of not allowing mail-in voting, of not counting everybody. The idea of not counting everybody is precisely to undermine our ability to then have the kinds of districts we need, which will happen in 2 years when we do redistricting, which is where I first met Justice Thomson, because he was representing the Secretary of State's office. And 10 years later, we were in that courtroom again together, and he was fighting on for voting rights, for making sure that everybody was represented. And then I met him again, and when I was arguing a case before him. And I want to just take this moment, like pause on what I was going to say it is so important that we show up for the justices and the judges. Because as you heard him say earlier, he can't talk about a lot of things. He can't talk about, hey, vote for me because I voted this way on this case. He can't talk about that. He cannot campaign the way, we can campaign, where we can raise the issues. He can campaign on the ideals of the judiciary. So we need to protect them because they are under attack for the decisions that they are making. And those decisions that they are making are based on their professional judgment as justices, and we need to protect them from the attacks that the Republicans are making on our sitting justices. And so we have to not talk to he asked us to each talk to 10 people. We need to talk to 25 and 30 about our justices, because we cannot let our judges not get reelected. Or elected and kept in office. So we need to really make sure that we keep a strong judiciary in New Mexico. So, but getting back to democracy, our environmental issues are also as interconnected, and we cannot leave them behind as we address the pandemic. And what we're going to be faced with as we come out of the pandemic is the need to have a stimulus. And that stimulus is going to be like something not like what happened after 2008. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be closer to what the New Deal was. And when we talk about what it's going to do, we need to take the opportunity and the challenge to say we're going to address the environmental crisis. We're going to address the environmental crisis together with in addressing that, creating jobs. And creating opportunities. We are going to need to invest in our infrastructure, because this crisis has showed us that when you don't have the infrastructure, it causes death. It causes despair. It means that children cannot learn online because the internet is not there and available to them. It means that people cannot get telehealth because it is not available to them. It means we're going to have to invest in our rural areas, because they're going to be part of the solution for diversifying our economy, because they are part of the solution for solving our environmental crisis, and because we love them, because New Mexico is a rural state, and we need to invest in our rural areas. So as I go to Congress in 2021, I can tell you that I recognize the complexity of the challenge, but they also recognize, as I started, that it's time now for that bold and courageous action to actually meet these challenges. And I think we are going to meet this historic moment with the kind of bold and courageous action that we have been calling for a year. But that we are going to then have an alignment of having a President Biden and whoever his amazing vice president is going to be, of having a flipped Senate, of having a strong House, of having a Democrat governor, a strong legislature, because we're going to have Cristina Ortiz over there doing her work together with your new senator. And we're going to have a great Taos County and town of Taos with some of those amazing women that I see on the chat here. It is going to be so great to have this alignment so that we can all address these issues which have been pending for too long with a sort of unity of purpose. And I think that that unity of purpose based in, like what I've said, right? There aren't a lot of campaigns that I'll talk about love as much as I do, but I think it's because it is that powerful force, and it comes, from that line of, from King to, from King to John Lewis to, lessons I've learned from working with Taos Pueblo and working with Native Americans, where they ground themselves as looking at the universe and making sure you pay attention to the entire community. And so we need to remember all of that. And I will take those lessons with me to be that kind of voice for that unified action on very bold and courageous action to address these challenges. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I didn't know if Council Member Suazo and former Governor Suazo, did you want to say anything else?
Thank you, Teresa. And once again, I'm Gilbert Suazo, Sr., a former governor for Taos, Pueblo, and a tribal councilman. Tonight, I am speaking as a community member of Taos, Pueblo. Teresa, as you know, our tribal council has already endorsed your candidacy for New Mexico's 3rd Congressional District for the 2020 elections. And I just want to express my strong support for you in your candidacy. And Teresa, you are a very capable attorney who has been working for our tribe for a number of years. And it's not only that, but you've also been working very closely with us in our business development efforts to improve the economic conditions of our community. And I really appreciate the personal approach that you give the work that you do for us. And as you know, when we have community activities, you've been up here at Taos Pueblo. You've been to our house, helping the lady folks in our family to prepare the feast foods and all that. And I appreciate that, Teresa. That was even before you decided to be a candidate. That's the kind of person that you are, like to be out in a community and be with the people. And I like that, Teresa. Now, you've also demonstrated a lot of sincere and personal interest in the betterment of the Taos Pueblo community. And I believe that you are going to demonstrate a similar strong commitment at the national level in the betterment of our state of New Mexico and in our country, the United States of America. So with your strong regional background and broad work experience, I believe, Teresa, that you're going to be a very capable and dedicated representative for New Mexico, representing the diversity of our population of our state of New Mexico. Also, Teresa is very familiar with the New Mexico tribal governments, and of course with the state government and its community governments. And I expect that she will be representing our interests very well in the Washington arena. Now, right now, Teresa, I think like many of us, I am very disturbed about the current state of our country. Disappointed, I guess is what I would say, of what we are seeing in the country now on different levels. When I hear what's going on and see what's going on, I see these feelings and attitudes that have been apparently just under the surface, and I'm really disappointed that that's where we are as a country. I thought we were more civilized. I thought we were more mature, but of all the things that are going on, it's brought out the worst in some of our citizens, and I'm really disappointed. I'm hoping that this coming year will be a different year with a new president and new representatives in Washington, where that's who we look to, us people down here, to provide the necessary leadership. And of course, in particular, as a Native American, I am interested in Native American issues at the state and the national level. And this pandemic that we're experiencing now has brought out many of the shortcomings that are there for Native Americans. The United States not meeting its responsibility as it should. And those are things that are really of great concern. All this time, I guess, in a way, we thought things were going along fine, but when a crisis like this has hit us, it brings out a lot of things that are both good and bad. And I look forward to the coming year, that it's going to be a better year for our country, our state, and our citizens. So I'm looking to you, Teresa, to be out there to represent our interest, and I wish you well. And may the Great Spirit bless you with the guidance that you're going to need and the wisdom that you're going to need when you serve there in a much bigger arena. So thank you very much for inviting me to participate in your meeting tonight. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. So are there other questions? Thank you so much, former governor, and for the blessings. So do we have some other questions that we can go to, and I can maybe weave in the issues around the failures with regards to infrastructure and trust responsibilities after we hear from some of the other questions?
Thanks, Teresa. We actually do have, there was one that came in to the host for us to present. And just as a reminder, as some of you might have seen in the chat, we do want to try to respect everyone's time and wrap up close to 8. So that gives us a little more than 15 minutes for questions. But Ham Brown would like to know, Teresa, if you would co-sponsor Pramita Jayapal's constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United.
Absolutely. As you know, I am I got endorsed by End Citizens United since the primary, and by many other voting rights organizations. The issue of democracy has always been very important to me, and the way you make sure every voice is heard is to make sure that every voice counts the same. And so, yes, I am very supportive of those kinds of reforms.
George, I'm not sure if you've had other questions come in to the host channel, or if folks would like
Yes,
to.
I have. I was trying to copy and paste them to send to you. But that didn't work. So people are seeing things they shouldn't see. The question, the question was a political one. To what extent are you collaborating with Deb Haaland and Xochitl Torres?
This is a great question. So as everybody knows, we are working as hard as we can with the coordinated campaign. And so we are collaborating, coordinating all the time. And that's the great thing is I will tell you, I'm so glad to be past the primary, because I am more of a we person rather than a me person. Primary is like, vote for me, vote for me. And well, now that we're in the November, it's we, right? Because we want to make sure that that we elect Democrats up and down the ballot, from President Biden to Senator Ben Ray Lujan, that we get Deb Haaland reelected, and that we get Xochitl reelected. And so we are all working together on that. And there is Sophia Garcia is on the chat. And Sophia, can you put your, is there a way for Sophia to put her contact? She is the coordinator. So she is there as a resource to Taos County, right? Taos, you have Taos, right, Sophia? So we'll have Sophia.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have Sophia.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'll include my info in the chat. I'm the coordinated campaign organizer for Taos County, Rio Arriba County, and Los Alamos County.
And so we are working, so and that's something that we're doing together, and the other thing that I am working with is to actually try to protect all of our, they call them frontliners, right? Those candidates, congressional candidates across the country who flipped the House. So we need to protect all of them, including Xochitl, and I am working on a national level now on that as well.
Thank you, Teresa. We do have a question from Alma Lones next. Alma, would you like to unmute and go ahead and ask your question?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hi, Alma.
Actually, loans, it used to be Lomonosov, so
Come a little
So
closer to your microphone.
It's a little hard to hear you, Alma.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I said it's loans because it used to be
loans.
Law off. Anyway, so my question is about Border Patrol and ICE. And I've read a lot about people proposing that they be eliminated. And it sort of fits into the whole thing of the reforming law enforcement. So I'd like to know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I think that we need to really go back and you know, the United States reacted, right? Reacted to 9/11, and they, you know, restructured and created ICE and the Border Patrol, and the manner in which they have carried out their mission has been egregious, has been a violation of our laws, violation of our actual laws, like our asylum laws. Our own asylum laws are being violated by the manner in which they've carried out their duties. And so that needs to be completely reimagined, right, and redone as we think about what is the role that we need them to play. And it should not be what they have been doing now, right? There is a role. We do have importance of having a border that, you know, that a border, and but where do all of the drugs and the contraband come? It's not coming with asylum and refugees. It is coming across the main checkpoints for the most part. So we need to be honest about where the problems are, where we do have to have border security, and say, let's focus our efforts there now and not create violation of human rights and violation of our own laws. And so I agree that we need to engage in that reimagining of what is the right way of actually organizing ICE, La Migra, you know, which we used to call it La Migra, and it's ICE by any other name. They're still engaging in violation of constitutional rights for not only on asylums, but immigrants, and also of, you know, Latinos and Asian American, you know, people who, you know, across the border. I worked on cases against the Border Patrol back in the late 80s. And so I'm aware of the manner in which they have, when they were La Migra, they were still violating, and they haven't changed. They've only gotten worse.
Thank you, Teresa. We do have another question from Tracy. Tracy, do you want to unmute and go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Teresa, how do you feel about possible prosecutions of some of the people that have been obstructing justice, in my opinion, like Barr, Pompeo, Pence, etc.?
Thank you, Tracy, for that question. And I do think that when we have a new AG, that it is absolutely within that AG's purview and responsibility to actually look at all criminal activity that may have occurred during this administration across the board. And I think we should not be afraid of doing that either, because what we've had so far is that there have been a lack of consequences, right? There's been a lack of consequences for activity that may be criminal. And so I've been really pleased at seeing how, you know, so because I also want to have this take back some of its own over the years, is cede too much of its control to the executive. And we have seen that when you have an executive that's willing to go as far as this one has, that we have entered into territory we couldn't have even imagined. So I think that we need to do both the prosecutions. That's going to be something that the U.S. Attorney is going to have to look at. I'm thankful for the work that, especially out of New York, that the New York AG has been willing to do on a lot of these issues. And so, but this is stuff that needs to be taken up by our new Justice Department when we have that in 2021.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Teresa. I do have.
Do you have any others?
Yes, I have at least one more, and I think George has one too. Alice Martinez would like to hear about your position on federal agents coming into cities to quote unquote restore law and order when the president is actually suppressing the right to protest. And I think, Teresa, you're frozen.
Teresa, you want to go off and come back on for a sec?
Yeah.
I can fill the time where we have just 8 minutes left.
Yeah, why don't you talk about voting, George, and we'll try to get Teresa back up.
Okay, get Teresa back up, see if you can do that. The young man who's here in the background on behalf of the justice and judge candidates has put in the chat, and I want to agree that you start at the end of the ballot. I think it may be the back of the ballot, and work your way up to the president. And make that, there's Jonathan, and make that a mantra that you tell to other people. Start at the bottom, work your way to the top, so that you don't miss these candidates in contested races, the 2 justices, the 2 judges. You can skip Marcus's because he's going to vote for himself and he's unopposed, but it's always really good for Marcus to get lots of votes. So I guess we want to include him to fill in that bubble for Marcus. Remember that what we're going to be doing, now I'm just filling air. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be encouraging getting your ballot by mail. It will start to trickle out from the clerk's office on October 6th. So put in for an absentee ballot, but we are probably going to really encourage people to drop their ballot off and not to put it back in the mail. There will be places around the county, either at the early voting centers, on election day at all of the 30 polling places where you can drop your ballot off. So we don't want you to go inside and spend a lot of time to vote, but we certainly do want you to get your ballots in advance, fill them out. If you've got 2.5 weeks or so, fine, you can mail it back. But once you're within that 10-day time period, we encourage you to drop it back. Okay, that's my time. I think Teresa's back. Are you back, Teresa?
Yep.
Okay, there was a question from, last question. What was it, Anjanette?
There was one last question, and I'm not sure if you heard it, Teresa, before.
I didn't hear it. Sorry about that.
That's quite
Okay.
all right. And it comes from Alice Martinez, and she would like to hear about your position on federal agents coming into cities to restore law and order when we have a president who is actually suppressing the right to protest.
I think that is, there is, I think it is a violation of many different things. The federal agents should not, I tweeted about this and wrote about this when they first came into Albuquerque, right? And I think it's simply an effort. So there's the legal issues that are wrong, but then there's underlying, what is he trying to do? And I think that Councilmember Suazo touched on it, right? That when he said, he's never imagined that we'd be where we are, right? But what that is a desire to instill fear, to rule by fear, which is a very autocratic kind of way of going about things, right? That you want people to be afraid. And if they are afraid, they will vote for you. If they're afraid of Mexicans, if they're afraid of Muslims or gay people, or, you know, name it. If they're afraid of things, then they will vote for you. And so that's how he wants to win this election, by instilling fear and having the sense that there is disarray and that people's lives are at risk and that the federal government is at risk. And that's simply not the case. And I think that what happened in Portland, where you actually had the local authorities say, get out, right? And they haven't got out. And here in Albuquerque, I know that I'm sorry, but I wish I knew the exact status now. I haven't checked into it. I know there have been those discussions. I don't know if Marcos, you know where that is at, but it is simply the wrong thing to do. It is deploying federal agents where they are not needed, and it's not within their mission. It is not within the mission for them to be out there. And I think what it's touching on too, in the manner in which it was asked, is this really an attempt to violate our constitutional right of free speech by utilizing these agents in that way? And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see some legal action from some groups addressing that if it continues.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you for your answers, your availability. Justice Thomson, same to you. And I know I speak for Teresa and Justice Thomson when I say thank you to everybody who made time to join us tonight. It's important that we know our candidates. And I think more importantly, it's important that our candidates know where we're coming from, what our questions are, and what's important to us. So I would encourage everyone here tonight to reach out to these campaigns and be a part of this process, because as you can see, the politics determine quite a bit, whether it's legislation, the judiciary, or the executive. So Taos County Democratic Party, thank you so much, Blue Donkey, and you all have a wonderful and safe COVID-free evening. God bless. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to everyone. I love seeing so many faces.
There were the ones who are hiding too, Teresa.
I know, now they're coming out.
About 45 people.
Yeah.
That is great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Democratic Federation of Women, Federation of Democratic Women. Obrigada, obrigada.
Everybody hit end.